Morning, everyone. Welcome. Nice to see you all here this morning. And as I said, I'll try and adjust the content to fit with everybody who's here. So today, as David said, we're celebrating 3 holy days. Does anybody under the age of 20 remember which ones they were? No, maybe not. Okay, no, of course, you weren't here at the beginning, so you're let off then. Okay, it's Heavenly Parents' Day, True Parents' Day, and celebrating the anniversary of True Parents' wedding. Okay, so Heavenly Parents' Day. So this is from the Bible. It says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one." So this is the idea that a heavenly parent, it's got an apostrophe there, is one God. Okay, and it says here, "Hear, O Israel." It doesn't say look or obey, it says hear. So when you hear, what are you doing? You're listening to a voice. So this is the idea here, that God isn't a picture, God isn't a statue, you can't see God, God is invisible, but you can hear God. So listen. So where do you hear God? Anybody? No. Where do you hear? Oh yes, you got the answer. Where do you hear God? You hear him in heaven. Where can you hear his voice? Where? Where can you hear God's voice? In heaven. We look up there. You can't see God, no. So have you got any ideas where you hear God's voice? Sure.
In your heart.
Does God speak to you in your heart? In your conscience? Yeah, you sometimes get this little voice, you want to do something wrong, and a little voice says, no, you shouldn't do that. Where is that? Is that from heaven or is it inside you? That's right. So that's the voice, we should listen to that voice. Because God is like a voice, not a something God can't see God. So hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. So just one God, and God is a harmonized, unified being. Okay, so what's the alternative to having one God? Instead of one God, you might have... What? Lots of gods, right? Lots of gods. They call it many gods. So do you know what... there's a special word for many gods. Anybody know what it is? Polytheism, that's right. Thank you, David. Glad somebody's paying attention at the back there. Okay, poly means many. So this is from Greek, I think. Yeah, and theism means God. That's the Greek word for God is theism. And so polytheism means many gods. And so the Greeks, they believed in many gods. Have you heard of the Greek gods? Yeah. Can you then name some for me? Zeus, what was he? What was he known for? Power. What was his main weapon? Do you remember? It's a thunderbolt. So light, thunder, lightning. Okay, any other names of the Greek gods?
Dionysus.
Who's that? Dionysus, yeah, that's another one. Okay, so they believed in many gods. And do you know where the Greek gods lived? They didn't live in heaven, they lived somewhere else. Pardon? On a mountain, yay! Do you know what the mountain was called? We often use this word for sports. That's right, Mount Olympus, that's right. That's where the word Olympic Games comes from. Because it's the Greeks that invented the Olympic Games, and they're all running around this mountain. And that's why it's called Mount Olympus, and they believe that's where the gods lived. They lived on this mountain. And these are some of the gods. There were 12 of these Olympians, that's what they were called. They were called Olympians, and there were 12 of them. Zeus, as Uncle David said, was the king of the gods, and then all his brothers and sisters. But where did they come from? So there are lots of stories that go along with this, of people sitting around trying to wonder, where did the world come from? And so who rules the world? So Zeus running the thunderbolts, and Poseidon, had a trident, he was the god of the sea, and all these different gods doing different things. But anyway, these Olympians, they came from people called Titans. These are other gods, the old gods. And there were 12 Titans, just like there were 12 Olympians. And 2 Titans called Kronos and Rhea, they gave birth to these 12 Olympians. And you might wonder, what happened to the Titans? Well, the Olympians decided they didn't like the Titans anymore, so they overthrew their parents, and they overthrew all the Titans, and they put them in prison in Tartarus, and they were imprisoned in Tartarus under the ground. And Kronos, we get the word, anybody know what word we get from Kronos? Time, that's right. It was time. And Rhea. And you might, well, where did all the Titans come from? Well, the story there is that they came from these other 2 gods, Uranus, who is the god of the sky, and Gaia, who is the goddess of the earth. And so here's the idea that Kronos himself, he decided to overthrow his dad, Uranus, and become the king. And then he was overthrown by Zeus. And so you can see it's very, very messy. Lots of people, lots of gods fighting each other, multiplying together, and it was a very, very messy kind of world. Can you see any human beings in here? No. Human beings don't really occur in this story of the Greek gods, but they did appear a little bit. And so the gods then, they begat gods, and Gaia, of course, begat Uranus. And the question is then, well, why did the gods create human beings? Well, what did the gods like doing? They liked eating and feasting. But they didn't like working. So they needed some workmen. They needed somebody to go and plant, till the land, and someone to grow the crops, and someone to bring in the sheep. And so they decided, well, we need to have some workmen. So we created human beings to be the workmen. And so human beings then were created to serve the gods by bringing them lots of food to eat. And that's where you get this idea of sacrifices and feeding the gods. And that was the job of the human beings, was to feed the gods. And here's some pictures of some of these Greek gods. And in Greece, they had lots of temples where they worshipped these gods, and they had big statues. And the human beings came along, and they brought lots of offerings to the gods. And we often call these idols. Yeah, these statues are called idols. And you might think, well, that's really odd. Nobody goes around worshipping statues anymore. Do they? No. So do you think idol worship has stopped?
Different kinds of idols now.
Different kinds of idols, David. Do you want to tell us about one or 2?
What do you call it? Hollywood?
Hollywood, yeah. Celebrity culture, yes. You want to have pictures of, different celebrities. Well, anyway, when I was a child, you had pictures of these different celebrities on your walls. Did you have that at rugby? You had pictures on the walls of all these different people? No, you didn't. Oh, okay. You're much better than me. Footballs, players, they get paid a ridiculous amount of money. Anyway, so what about today's idols? So this is a little commentary here. The prevalence of the rightness of having a multiplicity of gods for a multiplicity of purposes was deeply rooted in the psyche of the ancient world. And the Israelites were no exception. And this has remained true today. While we may look at the statues of Greek and Roman gods in the museums of the world and feel no resonance with them, we're not so different from the people who worship them sincerely. We too fall into the habit of not being true to the one God. We idolize all sorts of people or ways of being or objects. We idolize celebrities, be they in the popular entertainment industry or writers, artists, scientists. We idolize the marketplace or money and people who own it, and we idolize the products of the fashion industry. Fantasies about unlikely and unrealistic situations, really believe that if we were thinner or prettier or more powerful or in some way our life would be transformed. Sometimes we make a fetish of political positions, be they left wing or right wing, and we idolize religious leaders too. And that is possibly the most dangerous of all. So people worship something other than the one God that created the heavens and the earth. And maybe celebrities, maybe wearing a particular kind of fashion label. Where does my jacket? Oh, it's real Harris tweed, etc., etc. And that's often people think that that's the most important thing in life. And it becomes like the ultimate value. And you can see this, the polarization in our society today by people, whether they support Israel or they support Palestinians or support this or that. And people are so obsessed. I mean, I'm struck by the people's obsession with Donald Trump, either for or against. I mean, it's just ridiculous. There's nobody perfect or completely evil. One needs to have much more nuance in evaluating all these different people and not regard them as idols or as in a good way or as demons in the other way. Well, to take and realize that actually things are much more complicated than that. And of course, it mentions there the possibility of idolizing religious leaders. This has also been a huge problem within religion. That was one of the reasons why Guru Gobind Singh, he said, there are going to be no more gurus after me. It's going to be, what's the book called again? The Granth. Guru Granth, which is the textbook. And so they started up from that time, after the death of Guru Gobind Singh, they just did Hundake. And they would just study the text. And they wouldn't worship any human beings or follow any human beings. They would worship, they would just focus upon the text and listen to the text and what God was saying to them in their conscience. Yeah. Within Christianity, it's again been a huge problem, making Jesus God. And then a result of that, you had huge conflicts between people disagreeing about who Jesus was. Is he the one with God, the co-substantial, the whole thing. Very, very complex. I'm sorry I've driven you all away. I was trying to lighten it up a bit. Anyway, and again, you get the same sort of thing with, in Islam as well. You not allowed to have pictures of the Prophet Muhammad or criticize the Prophet Muhammad. And again, people idolize the Prophet Muhammad. And so this, again, is very, very dangerous when people idolize another human being. I was just coming on to the story now. Okay, all right, never mind. Okay, so the story about who it was then who discovered that there's only one God. Do you remember? Who was that? Abram. Do you know what his name later became? Abraham. He's got a change of name. Anyway, he's the one who discovered God. And so you might wonder, well, how did he discover God? Well, like all of us, he was a little boy. There he is, little boy. Just to show you I'm not making this story up. And when he's a little boy, what do little children ask a lot? Often they say, why? Why do we have to do this? Why do we have to do that? Why is this happening? Why is that happening? How does this work? Full of questions. We were born with questions. And Abraham was a very, very persistent little questioner. And he used to drive his parents absolutely round the bend. Because whenever he said, why is this? And they would give him an answer. And what would he say next? Why? And then they'd try to explain a bit more. And again, what did he say? Why? And they explain a bit more. And then what would he say? Why? Anyway, he used to drive absolutely round the bend. So the fact he asked all these why questions, what does it mean? Why do you ask why? What? Because you want to understand, you want to know, you want to understand how does the world work? Why this, why that? And as long as people are asking why questions and how and when and all these questions, then they're alive. When as soon as you stop asking questions, that's it. Okay, so never stop asking questions. Sometimes people will say you shouldn't ask so many questions, but that's not right. You should always ask questions. Anyway, so one day he was a little boy and he wondered, have I always existed? And he realized, no, I can't remember a time when I didn't exist. Then he wondered, well, where do I come from then? And so he went and asked his mum and dad, where do I come from? And they said, well, you come out of mummy's womb, out of mummy's tummy. And he thought, wow, you made me, you created me, you gave birth to me. And so he started bowing down and worshipping his parents. After about a week, he said, well, where did you come from? Have you always been around? And they said, no, of course not. We have parents as well. That's grandma and grandpa. Wow, I'm going to stop worshipping you. I'm going to go worship grandma and grandpa then. They're more important. And then after a while, he said to his grandma, Grandma, you got so many wrinkles, it looks like you've been alive forever. And she said, where did you come? Have you always been alive forever? And she said, no, of course not. I had parents. And he said, where are they? I want to go and worship them. And Grandma said, well, I'm sad to say they died. They're buried in the graveyard outside the town. So off he went and scrubbed the gravestones, and he found his great-grandparents and started worshipping them, and gradually started to figure out, well, there must have been something that started it all off. And he figured out there must be an invisible God that created the heavens and the earth. And that's who I'm going to worship, the invisible God that created the heavens and the earth. And he started talking to God, and he realized he could hear God's voice inside his heart, inside his conscience. And he started to develop a relationship with this God. And so that's why we say Abraham became the ancestor of faith. Because nobody taught him about God. He took the initiative to meet with and discover God himself. And so that's why true parents called him the ancestor of faith. Abraham was determined that no matter what kind of ordeals and difficulties he might face, he would overcome them hundreds and thousands of times. The heart of Abraham, the heart of God, who was desperately looking for a reciprocal object, came together in unity. And God was able to proudly give Abraham his blessings, which included the garden of the absolute ideal, for which God longed. This is how Abraham was put in the blessed position of being the ancestor of faith before heaven. And so he then became the ancestor of our faith. But it's not just Abraham. Not just Abraham. Who else was that there with Abraham? Sarah, that's right. And so that's why when Jews have their worship service in a synagogue, this is a typical prayer, which every Saturday, we praise you, Eternal One, our God and God of our ancestors, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, of Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah. Great and mighty, awesome and exalted God, you deal kindly with us and embrace us all. You remember the faithfulness of our ancestors, and in love bring redemption to their children's children for the sake of your name. You are our sovereign and helper, our redeemer and shield. We praise you, O God, shield of Abraham and protector of Sarah. So we go to synagogue or worship service, they always remember it's not just Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, it's also Sarah and Rebekah and Leah and Rachel, and they're always introduced as couples. Very sadly, within the Christian tradition, because Jesus never got married, we've always emphasized the men in the Bible. But all the men were all married, they all had wives. And, that's unfortunately, divine principle took that on. And then there's a very interesting verse in the Bible, which I've never seen hanging up in anybody's house for some reason. And I really ought to hang it up in my house. So Abraham and Sarah, they had a child. Do you remember what the child was called, their son? Isaac. Okay, so the child Isaac, after he was born, he grew and he was weaned, which meant he could start eating food. And on the day Isaac was weaned, Abraham held a great feast, a celebration. But Sarah saw the son whom Hagar the Egyptian had borne to Abraham was mocking, and she said to Abraham, "Get rid of that slave woman and her son, for that woman's son will never share in the inheritance of my son Isaac." The matter distressed Abraham greatly because it concerned his sons. He wasn't happy with the idea of sending his son away. So what did he do? He went and talked to God. It's always good if you don't know what to do. Go and talk to God and pray. And then God said to him, when Abraham was telling God about this difficult situation, God said to him, "Do not be so distressed about the boy and your slave woman. Listen to whatever Sarah tells you, because it is through Isaac your offspring will be reckoned. I'll make the son of the slave into a nation also, because he is your offspring." So there's a little sentence there. Listen to your wife and do whatever she tells you to do. And I'm afraid to say, I don't do that. But anyway, it's a good piece of advice. Listen to your wife. As Mike was saying the other day, Mike Balcon, can't remember where he said it now. Anyway, yeah, he said, the father said once, you should never argue with your wife, you'll never win. But if you do win, you've really lost badly. So, yeah, that's interesting. And so these are the teaching then of Abraham and Sarah. You might wonder, what do they teach? Well, the first thing, all the stories you find in Genesis, that comes from Abraham and Sarah. That's what they taught. They taught there's only one God. And also that God is the embodiment of masculinity and femininity. God created human beings in his image and likeness, male and female. He created them. So also that God is our parent. God is our father and our mother. God is one God, but is both our father and mother. And they also introduced God as a God of heart. So I think the word heart is mentioned hundreds of things, 300 or 400 times in the Old Testament. This sense that God is a being of heart, and God sets his heart upon people. And of course, that's what it says in the principle, which is the new expression of the old truth. The most essential aspect of God is heart. A heart is the impulse to love an object, as a fountain and motivator of love. It's the nature of heart to seek an object to love. So God, whose essence is heart, feels joy when he can love an object that he created. And so, of course, this is just a nature we want to have. We enjoy having objects. So what do children like playing with? Toys, sometimes. Just toys? No, they like to try, they don't distinguish between, this is a toy which I should play with, and this is something else I shouldn't play with. So they go into the kitchen, they open the cupboards, they take all the saucepans or frying pans out, and bang them together, make a big noise, and anything. They just want to touch everything they can see, they want to touch and have a relationship with. And, if you hold it a long way away and say, don't touch, no, they get really frustrated because they want to touch it, they want to hold it and put it in their mouth. Don't they? Yeah, chewing things, yes. Chewing things you're not supposed to chew. And end up with all these chewed up things. And, yeah, so wanting to become one with something. And after a while, you get bored with the child gets bored with one thing, and then goes on and plays with something else, and something else, and something else, and always looking for new things to understand and to make sense of. Once they've got their head around it, then they move on to something else. But you get a bit fed up with physical objects. You like to play with things that are alive, like a little kitten. Much more fun. And having a pet. Do you have a pet? Got a rabbit? A what?
She's getting.
Oh, you're getting one. What are you getting? A rabbit. Oh, okay. That was a good guess then. I like to play with pets, with animals, because they're more like us than physical things are, toys. They like to play with animals and pets, and then eventually, you can read if you had a rabbit. Do you like writing poetry? No. What would happen if you read a poem to a rabbit? Would it be able to appreciate your poetry? No. Okay, try it when you get a rabbit. So write out a poem and read it to Grandpa, and then read it to the rabbit and see and compare the different responses. Yeah, which one do you think would respond better? Or Grandpa? Yeah. Why? Because he could understand what you were saying and appreciate it. Yeah. Whereas the rabbit would, if you're lucky, it will lift up its ear, floppy ear, and listen, but it won't really understand what it is you're saying. It just wants a carrot, not to be fed. And so that's why we like to have other human beings, people who we can share our heart with, our life with, who can make sense, who can understand what it is we want to say, what it is we want to share, and someone who is like us in that way, complementary, but also mysterious in some way, stimulating. And so that's why God created us in his image and likeness, because he wanted to have beings like himself, have the capacity to be able to receive all the love he wanted to give, and not just receive it, but to be able to respond and give back as well. Yeah, so that's why God, if you're very happy, what do you want to do usually? Share it, yeah. You want to phone up your friends, want to go and visit your friends. You're really happy. If you're very unhappy and depressed, what do you want to do? Hide away. Yeah, that's just the way it is, isn't it? So God is love, and God is infinite love. So naturally, if God is infinite love, he just wants to give the love away. And the only problem was there was no one to give the love to. There's no one with whom he could share his heart. No one with whom he could give his love to. And so that's why God created the physical world. That's why God created human beings that have the ability to appreciate and respond to the love and everything he wanted to give and develop that kind of relationship. And so that's like us, really. And so this is the last little bit here. Since it's Heavenly Parents' Day, I thought we should have a psalm praising God. Lord our God, how majestic is your name in all the earth. You set your glory in the heavens through the praise of children and infants. You have established a stronghold against your enemies to silence the foe and the avenger. That's interesting. Through the praise of children and infants. When I consider this is the psalmist who's writing here, when I consider your heavens and the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you have set in place, what is mankind that you're mindful of them? Human beings that you care for them. You've made them a little lower than gods and crowned them with glory and honor. So this is a psalmist. He's looking at the universe. He's looking at all the stars. He's looking at the Milky Way. He's looking at the mountains and the trees and everything. And it's so extraordinary, this enormous universe that God created. But at the same time, he feels God cares about me, little me. If you look at the Earth from the moon or from space, can you see a human being? You can't. You can't see a little human being. But the God that created the earth and created the moon and the sun and all the stars, this vast universe, God created all of this, but he's interested in me. He's interested in you. He cares about each of us as individuals, even though from the point of view of looking at the world from outer space, you can't see individuals. But it's the individuals that God is interested in and cares about. You made them rulers of the works of your hands. You put everything under their feet. So God created us to look after the world in which we live and to become owners of the world in which we live and take care of it for him. All flocks and herds and the animals of the wild, the birds in the sky and the fish in the sea, all that swims the paths of the sea. Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth. Amen. That's Heavenly Parent. How majestic is God, and how amazing that he cares about us as his children. Well, thank you all very much. And spend a few moments in prayer and meditation. Thank you.